By the end of 1905, Cunard had two new ocean liners in service, the Carmainia, which possessed a steam turbine propulsion plant, and the Coronia, which used quadruple expansion engines. It is often repeated that the Carmainia and Coronia had these two different propulsion systems installed so that Cunard could test the two vessels and decide whether they wanted steam turbines or reciprocating engines in their new class of superliners, the Lusitania class. However, what people don't actually know is that Cunard decided they were going to install steam turbines a year before these two ships were completed. Today we are going to look into a little bit of Lusitania lore known as the Turbine Committee. This committee was assembled by the Cunard line in order to test the pros and cons of steam turbines and reciprocating engines by comparing the two directly. Now there are three other major parties involved in the Turbine Committee, though their members do not make up a large percentage of the team. This would be the John Brown Shipyard, which was building the Lusitania, the Swan Hunter Shipyard, which was building Mauretania, and members of the Royal Navy, because the Royal Navy was developing a new type of warship, and they were investigating using reciprocating engines and steam turbines on it as well, and of course this ship would become the Dreadnought. The Turbine Committee would be assembled using a wide variety of ranks from the Cunard line, with the superintendent leading the committee all the way down to active engineers since they had hands-on experience with marine engines. Now, outside of the engines themselves, many other factors had to be included by the committee in order to make an effective ruling on which engine they felt was better, and this included the hydrodynamics, which meant the size and shape of the hulls, and the propeller designs, though it is fair to say little attention was given to these until after the ships were already in service and the propellers themselves could actually be tested on the functioning vessel. In early 1903, a series of models were constructed to scale with various sizes and shapes of ship hulls in three locations, the first one being the Royal Navy's experimental tank at Haslar, the second one being John Brown using the Clydebank, and the third being Swan Hunter using the Tyne. By August of 1903, tons of models had been tested, and it was decided that the ships would have a maximum length of 790 feet and a maximum beam of 88 feet. In late 1903, the committee could begin testing the engines themselves. They would use the newly constructed SS Brighton, which contained steam turbines, and the slightly older SS Arundel, since it contained reciprocating engines. The results were very clear-cut with these live tests. At low speeds, it was found that the reciprocating engine consumed less steam than the turbines, which meant they had better fuel efficiency. However, when you get up to medium and high speeds, which these vessels were expected to run at most of the time, the tables flipped and the turbine consumed less steam than the reciprocating engine, a maximum of 8% less steam, which meant the turbine had better fuel efficiency overall. Another point that was investigated during these live tests was comfort for passengers, aka vibrations let off by the engine. Reciprocating engines with their large swinging crank arms and moving pistons would often let out a large amount of vibrations. On small scales, this would impact the rooms surrounding the engines, whereas when we get to larger scales like the SS Deutschland, you'll start seeing entire portions of the ship shake. Something that the committee noted about the steam turbines on Brighton was there was no vibrations in the surrounding area of the engine room. This meant that any vibrations the engine was letting off was being contained within the engine room. So it was quite clear that the steam turbine was a more comfortable option for passengers. It also proved to be a better option for the crew and company. Because the steam turbine had less functioning parts, it did not always need the large number of crew available to grease or maintain the engine, and thus this meant that the company could cut down on crew members, which saved them money, and it also saved a lot of men hard labor. And finally, another crucial point to the turbine that was noted was the size of the engine for the output of power. A reciprocating engine was quite tall and stuck above the waterline, and since Lusitania, Mauretania, and Dreadnought were being designed with the intention of potentially seeing battle, if a penetration gets into the engine room and hits the reciprocating engine, the ship will obviously be immobilized. The advantage to the steam turbine was it was compact and could be entirely contained below the waterline, keeping it safe from horizontal shell fire. Even though the turbine committee was aware that the reciprocating engine was larger than the steam turbine, they still stressed in their report that on the scales being investigated, the turbine would still be a very large engine and would still need an extensive amount of space given to it. Even with all of those points stacking up heavily against the reciprocating engine, there was still a point to the reciprocating engine that was superior to the turbine, and this was the fact that turbines did not have a gearbox at this time, and so, in order to go in reverse, 2 turbines would have to be installed backwards in order to achieve this. So instead of having 4 engines, with 2 being capable of reversing the ship, there had to be 6, with 2 extras put in specifically for reversing, and in order for steam to get to the engines to reverse, it would have to go through the turbines placed in front of it. So even though only 2 engines are going to actively be reversing the vessel, 4 turbines were eating up steam in order to achieve this goal, and this caused a loss in fuel efficiency. Early versions of cruising turbines aboard warships also suffered from this issue, and so there were many instances where cruising turbines were never used because 2 turbines were needed where 4 were eating steam. Of course, given a couple of decades of development, the steam turbine would eventually receive a gearbox, and this horrible issue could be corrected. With all of this data having been collected and compiled into a report, on the 24th of March, 1904, the Turbine Committee submitted the report to the Cunard line, and it heavily recommended the use of the steam turbine over the reciprocating engine for the new liners, and the Royal Navy would follow in suit with these results for the Dreadnought. Cunard would obviously accept these results, and the Lusitania and Mauretania would be completed with 6 steam turbines, 2 high pressure, 2 low pressure, and 2 low pressure in reverse. Hopefully you have enjoyed this brief overview into the largely forgotten Turbine Committee. If so, why not leave a like and comment down below, and have a wonderful day.